right here as soon as that goes red.
Good evening. Welcome. I would like to call to order the City of Colwood Planning and Land Use Committee meeting for Monday, July 6, 2026. I would look to the committee to get an approval of the agenda, item 2.1. There's a mover. Thank you, Kaitlyn. All those opposed? Seeing none, we will move on to. Actually, I skipped a portion, sorry. It's been a few weeks for me chairing a meeting, so I'll just do the land acknowledgement here. We'll acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Kisepsum nations. Item 3 on the agenda is adoption of the minutes. If I could have a mover from the committee to adopt the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting minutes from May 4th, 2026. Councillor Grove, thank you. We'll move on to public participation momentarily. First, I wanted to thank the committee members that are here this evening and thank Councillor Grove, who is filling in for Councillor Olson, who sends her regrets. And committee members Katrina and James could not be here this evening as well. So we'll move on to public participation. One written submission was received prior to agenda publication. It's attached to the agenda. 5 written submissions were received, one of which was a petition after agenda publication. And written submissions will be added to the city meeting's website following the meeting. No members of the public have registered to speak virtually as of this time. So with that, I'll open the floor to public participation. Just for any folks who are interested, you have 2 minutes at the microphone at the podium there if you want to come up and contribute. There is a little silver button at the base of the microphone to hit if you'd like to do so. So with that, I'd open the floor to whomever is interested in addressing the committee.
Hi. Yeah, good evening. My name is Colin McKenna, and I'm very interested to hear how the committee is going to justify the recommendations made by the planning committee, by the planning department for tonight's project, which is the DVP for Royal Commons. Because clause 6 of the original agreement, which was DP 22022 back in July 2023, said that any change to the form and character of this development should be only minor. Now we're going from 4 6-story buildings to 5 6-story buildings. That is 25%. Now just get away from the buildings. What I'm concerned about is that building means 25% of lost green spaces, alleyways, and walkways that we considered was so important for Royal Bay and the communities that we were buying into. You know, we were shown at that stage that on the corner there was going to be a light, small building with an alleyway. And so that's my first point. The second point is I think that I've been to a couple of council meetings, and I think the council back in 23 were maybe correct the way that they accepted that planning, because we all know that a lot more families are moving into these large buildings with the 6 stories, and it's really important that these families have green spaces for the children, because there's no backyards. And I think there should be garden plots and things like that, which would be in keeping with what we think of Royal Bay, because all of us who have signed the petition and have been, that's my point. Okay.
If you needed a few more seconds, that's fine. Or
that's what the point is, that I really think that well, that's really my main points, actually.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I appreciate you coming forward.
Okay, good.
Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to see a gentleman here? The microphone is still active for you there.
All right, excellent. Should I introduce myself?
Please, yeah.
Luna Bosat, and I live 3564 Ryder Hesjedal way.
Thank you.
A seaside community where home, nature, and connection meet. Those are Pat's words. At first glance, the requested variance appears substantial. Those are city staff words. Oxford Street in London has less density than the original Path plan of 5 multi-story buildings on a one-block site. Yet, we still accepted it. No issue with that plan. Now we learn that Path wants to add a 6th one. The city may approve minor variations, you say. Additional 6-story building with loss of green spaces represents 25% increase. Nothing of 25% is minor. We wouldn't call 25% cut of our salaries minor, would we? The planning report focuses on the impact to Royal Commons, a small road with shops. It totally ignores Tyler Hesjedal Way and the hundreds of people that live on it and impact it. So what do we get for our investments of collectively tens of millions of dollars and our support? Multiple buildings squished together with no care for our overall community. An imposing wall of 6-story buildings that fills a small 2-lane road in Colwood with the density of a street in London, UK. That's not Seaside Village. You know what I think it is? A lie. I feel we've been tricked and used. How else can we explain the fact this variation is proposed only after all units on Hesjedal have been sold and the path is now asking for a 6th multi-story building on one block? Wasn't 5 not enough? You support or the developer or the community, we elected you to represent us. Developers are in the community. We are community. You are hearing the community's concerns and have the power to change this. Don't take our support for granted, please. Don't make a permanent mistake in this community for 77 unneeded units. Ask Pat when is enough enough. As taxpayers, we would remember. As a member of this community, we would remember. And as voters, we would remember as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak at this time? Okay, last call for speakers. If there's anybody else who wants to, please come on up now. Otherwise, we will move on here. I see movement. Is that just shifting in the chair? Okay, thank you. So I think then that will be an end to public participation. We will move on then to new business. Item 5.1, which is the development variance permit for 3569 Ryder Hesjedal Way. We have Matt Blakely, our senior planner, who will be providing the staff report on this. Or presentation, I should say. Over to you.
All right, thank you. I'll just wait for this to come up. All right, thank you. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide a high-level summary of development variance permit application number DVP 00019 for the property located at 3569 Ryder Hesjedal Way. A more detailed analysis and supporting information are provided in the staff report. So this site is approximately 3,099 square meters or 0.65 acres and is located in Latoria South Royal Bay at the corner of Royal Commons Road and Ryder Hesjedal Way. It is within Area 2 of the CD28 zone and the Commons neighborhood as identified in the Latoria South sub-area plan. The site is bordered by Royal Commons Road to the north, Ryder Hesjedal to the west, an internal lane and 4-story mixed-use building to the east, and the rest of the Parcel B development site immediately to the southeast. You can see a depiction of that in the top right corner of the presentation slide. So on July 6, 2023, the original development permit, DP 22022 for Parcel B was issued. The approved development permit included 4 6-story apartment buildings, 1 4-story mixed-use building, and 1 amenity building. For context, the original development permit did not include the future park, which is at the corner of Ryder Hesjedal Way and Producers Way, or the presentation center at the corner of Royal Common Road and Ryder Hesjedal Way. But both were shown in the application package as part of the broader future plan for the site. The proposed development before you today would add apartment E to the overall parcel B site, shown in red, to incorporate the new building into the previously approved parcel B development permit plans. The applicant has submitted a development permit amendment application, which is separate from this variance application. Staff are currently reviewing that application. However, it cannot be processed or proceed past its current stage until council has made a decision on the related variance request before you this evening. So the proposal envisions the construction of a 77-unit mixed-use development designed to offer a diverse mix of housing options and ground floor commercial units along Royal Commons Road. Units will include 1 bedroom plus den, 2 bedroom, and 2 bedroom plus den. Units, the 2 commercial units will contribute to the active street frontage of Royal Commons Road and align with the intent of the Commons neighborhood, which is to be the commercial, social, and cultural heart of the Latoria South area. The building is proposed to be above 2.5 levels of underground parking, with a total of 88 residential, 13 visitor, and 6 commercial parking stalls. The proposal fully complies with all parking requirements set out in the off-street parking regulation bylaw, as well as all requirements of the Colwood land use bylaw, with exception to maximum building height that is subject of tonight's variance request. In addition to the variance application, the applicant has also applied for a form and character development permit for the building. Due to the variance request being associated with the overall building height, the approval of the variance is required to make the current development proposal feasible. Until that decision is made, staff cannot move forward with processing the development permit. As mentioned earlier, the applicant has also submitted a development permit amendment application to update the original parcel B development permit and include the proposed apartment E building into the overall site plan. This amendment would ensure that the new building is formally recognized within the established approvals for parcel B, allowing for integrated planning and compliance with existing development guidelines. Oh, sorry. Come on. Can you go back one slide, please? Thank you. In terms of the official community plan, the property is designated Seaside Village and is located within the Commons neighborhood as set out in the Latoria South sub-area plan. The sub-area plan identifies the property as part of Area 2, which is a 2.7 hectare mixed-use precinct intended to support the adjacent retail core. Along the northern edge, the plan envisions a pedestrian-oriented streetscape, which is along Commons Road, with ground floor retail and commercial uses and residential or commercial uses above. The plan anticipates building heights up to 4 stories along that northern edge and up to 6 stories across the rest of the site. It also identifies an overall density of about 3.0 floor area ratio, with the potential for additional density where the broader city objectives are achieved. Overall, the proposed development is consistent with that policy direction. It provides the mixed-use pedestrian-oriented building form along Royal Commons Road and then steps back to 6 stories toward Ryder Hesjedal, which reflects the height framework established for Area 2 in the CD28 zone. So the proposed development has been reviewed against the requirements of that CD28 Area 2 zone and is in full compliance with all zoning regulations with exception to maximum height. One point that I want to flag, you can kind of see highlighted in red there, is that the zone specifically distinguishes between apartment buildings, which may be up to 24 meters in height, and mixed-use buildings, which are limited to 15 meters. This distinction is central to the variance request, and I'll speak to this a little bit later in the staff analysis portion of the presentation. So specifically, the variance request, the applicant is requesting to vary section 10.33.5.2 of Colwood Land Use Bylaw 1989 to permit an increase to the maximum building height for a mixed-use building from 15 meters to 24 meters. I'll just pause in this image here. So on the left-hand side of your screen, that is the 4-story component that is fronting onto Royal Commons Road. And then at about 11 meters away from the property line, it steps back and then goes up into the 6-story apartment portion of the building. So although the requested variance appears substantial, it's largely due to the building's mixed-use classification rather than the overall form or height. The mixed-use frontage along Royal Commons Road generally remains within the 15-meter limit, except for a small parapet reaching 15.44 meters, while the residential portion is stepped back and reaches 21.64 meters, which is well below the 24-meter otherwise permitted maximum for apartment uses in Area 2 of the CD28 zone. So while the application technically seeks an increase from 15 meters to 24 meters for a mixed-use building, the added height is within the residential portion and in the area where greater height and density are anticipated in the official community plan. The proposal maintains a 4-story scale along Royal Commons Road and steps up along Ryder Hesjedal Way, consistent with the intent of the zone. The upper stories are set back well beyond the 1.5 meter minimum, reducing the perceived height from Royal Commons Road, aligning with the neighboring 4-story mixed-use building and supporting OCP direction for pedestrian scale and appropriate height transitions. Facade articulation, a varied roof line, and individual sorry, forgive me here. Facade articulation and varied roof line and individual unit articulation further reduce massing and add visual interest. Overall, staff consider the variance technical in nature, with the design mitigating height impacts while advancing the objectives of the CD28 Area 2 zone, the official community plan, and the South Latoria sub-area plan. In terms of public notification, a development notification sign has been posted on the subject property in accordance with council policy. The Local Government Act also requires written notice to be provided to property owners and occupants who may be affected by the proposed variance in advance of the council meeting where this decision for the variance will be considered. For this application, notice will be mailed to the owners and occupants within 100 meters of the site before that council meeting. So these are a few suggested options for the committee to consider this evening. I'll leave, I think I have, oh. I'll leave the staff recommendation on the screen for a few moments for your consideration. And at this time, I would like to introduce Matthew Davis, VP of Development with Path Developments, who has also prepared a presentation for you. I'm available to answer any questions prior to that or following Matt's presentation. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, councillors, mayor, members of the committee and the staff. My name is Matthew Davis. I'm here on behalf of Path Developments. Since 2015, Path has built more than 1,000 homes, delivered over 100,000 square feet of commercial space, built parks, trails, public gathering spaces, and a lot of the infrastructure required to support Royal Bay's continued growth. Building E is part of that vision. Our objective has consistently been to deliver complete communities where people can live, work, and gather. The intent is to complete this final building in a form that supports the pedestrian-oriented mixed-use neighborhood. So just before jumping a little more into the design, to explain the variance again, on paper, the variance relates to an increase in maximum building height from 15 to 24 meters for mixed-use buildings. However, we see this primarily as a classification issue under the land use bylaw, not a building form issue. Because the building includes ground floor commercial along Royal Commons Road, it's classified as mixed use and therefore a 15-meter height limit. At the same time, the residential portion of the building is located behind this frontage and remains fully within the 24-meter height already permitted for apartment buildings in CD28 Area 2. So by stepping the building and blending these height limits, we feel we do so in a way that keeps the commercial frontage within the lower mixed use scale and allows the residential portion behind it to align with the apartment height already contemplated for the area. So as been explained, a prominent corner at Royal Commons Road and Ryder Hesjedal Way, a transition between the commercial core and surrounding residential neighborhoods. The official community plan identifies this area once again as a pedestrian-oriented mixed-use district, and Building E has been designed with that vision. Just to cite a drone photo from May showing active construction with the mixed-use building there complete, and the residential building to the east of the site under construction. Just to rewind a little bit in terms of the planning context, the site plan on the screen is the existing approved development permit with 4 6-story buildings and a 4-story mixed-use building in the purple there. So what this application does is shortens the length of apartment D and adds an additional building to that north west corner. So under the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan Area 2 is specifically intended to provide a mixture of commercial residential uses that complement the adjacent retail core across Royal Commons. The first application was submitted in September 2022. Since then, the mixed-use building, amenity building, and Building A have advanced through approval and construction, consistent with the concept that was reviewed and approved previously. The February 2026 amendment is focused on completing this previously approved concept by adding Building E. It should be noted that we're adding the incremental unit count to this site is 66 units, I believe. But it does not change the overall density for Royal Bay. We have 2,600 units that we are allocating, and as we develop each parcel, we allocate a portion of that density. So the total density for Royal Bay is not changing. Also, as staff mentioned, an FSR of 3.0 across this site, and I believe we're building to under 2 FSR in terms of total density. So again, just the site plan showing Building E completing the commercial frontage along Royal Commons Road and the residential neighborhood behind, 77 units in this building with ground floor, about 2,500 square feet of ground floor commercial. The building meet all parking requirements and really, we believe, strengthens the commercial character of Royal Commons while delivering housing in a location that is already planned for this scale of development. The step massing provides a clear transition between the commercial core and surrounding residential buildings. Just a view there from Ryder. You see the boulevard landscaping, cycling infrastructure to create a strong public realm and provide separation between the developments. You'll notice there on the corner, we pulled the building back to, I believe our setback is about 6.5 meters from Royal Commons. The minimum is 1.5. So we've created significant plaza and gathering space on that corner with this building. So from this perspective, the building reads consistently with the existing 6-story buildings in that neighborhood. Again, just the active frontage showing how it connects to the existing mixed-use building adjacent to it that we are currently leasing with commercial tenants. So you can see the site follows the natural slope of the road, working with the topography to create a gradual change in scale. I think Matt took us through sort of where we stand versus the permitted height, with 15-meter height limit on the commercial portion and a 24-meter height permitted on the 6-story residential portion. Oops, sorry. Design and materials. So materials and colors are consistent with the previously approved buildings on parcel B. Durable, locally appropriate materials are used with complementary accent colors to provide architectural interest. This just ensures Building E is cohesive with the broader while maintaining its own identity. All vehicle loading and services are provided from the rear lane. This keeps Rural Commons Road free of service functions and maintains a pedestrian focused streetscape. So we proceeded with the proposed stepped mixed use option because it provides the best planning and design solution for this site. It balances the active commercial frontage along Royal Commons Road, the delivery of much needed housing and an appropriate transition in building scale, while best achieving the intent of the official community plan for a pedestrian oriented mixed use neighborhood center. Again, just a review of the building height. I think we've gone through this in detail. And at this time, happy to answer any questions about our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll go to the committee members. I see first up, I believe, is Trina. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to really understand the site first and then establish some timelines that went before. So in the current approved development, the DP 22-022, does building D of that sit on part of this site?
Perhaps to staff on that.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you. So currently, it is unsubdivided, so the application does kind of sit across those parcels. But to be clear, I just wanted to clarify on a point in my presentation, just because it was kind of detailed and confusing. But so there's the original development permit, for parcel B. This site or this building would be considered separately from that. So the amendment that they've proposed is actually shrinking the one building to accommodate this building, but this building is being considered separately, and it would be subdivided into its own parcel that would have a different address.
I do understand that. I just wanted to understand the architectural drawing A1 attached to the development permit shows that building D goes up to what is parallel to or a continuation of the end of the parking that is behind the commercial strip. So if no changes are made to DP 22, the previous, let's call it 022.
Sure.
The building site that is under question, or the one that is indicated as future display, not part of that application, that is smaller than the site that's being considered today. So we would have to amend the 022 to even allow a building to go up on here.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And that application has been submitted to amend those parcel lines.
Right. So then building E that's proposed is definitely on part of the lands that were approved in 022.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Further, when was the Eliza B, when was it started to be marketed?
Started to be marketed.
When did most of the people buy? When was your first sale?
I want to say 2021. 2021, June 2021, I think.
Okay.
I remember that. Lots happened since then. I think June 2021.
Okay, so that was prior then to 022 being adopted.
Yeah.
And what type of information were those buyers given with respect to the land in front of them?
So it was, they were physically on that land because that's where the presentation center was,
Yes.
on that parcel. I'd have to go back and look at the marketing material. I believe, at least I know for the plans that went into the city, it said future development parcel or future development area. I can't remember exactly what the wording was. In terms of our marketing material, I'd have to double check. I don't know the answer. It certainly wasn't that it wouldn't be developed or that there'd be a park there or that. Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I know for sure the city plans it was future development parcel.
And do you have any idea how many units were left in July of 2023?
Oh.
Approximately 50%, 25.
Yeah, I'd say probably 50%. A little bit, probably less, but around 50%.
Okay, and at that point, you would have had the development permit for the lands across the way,
Which was always shown.
and they were accessible.
Yeah, but
And-
yeah. I don't know. I think we probably had it in the sales center, but otherwise they were submitted to the city and it was always that 6-story format across the street.
Correct, across the street, but not shown on that particular corner.
The
That-
6-story, a 6-story building there was not shown across the street.
No.
No.
No, and the small information set, the outline of the sales,
Mhm.
previous sales center was shown on that corner.
In this material, yes. In the application, yes.
In the application, actually, on the approved development permit 022,
Yes.
it's also
Correct.
shown.
Correct.
And on that same drawing, it is shown that there is a continuation of the driveway that allows for parking behind the multi-use building. It looks like it continues and has parking stalls, which were originally for the sales, for the presentation center, but it does still show on the plan.
So my understanding, staff maybe looks correct me here, was that driveway was never going to connect through to Ryder. I don't believe, because the elevation is much, much lower on Ryder versus that. So that driving aisle was there for the parking for the PC, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was that drive aisle was never connecting through.
Okay. Unfortunately, then the drawing is misleading because it does show that it is a continuation. So just want to put that out there. Looking at the site itself, the park on the other end, is that actually going to be a park?
Yeah.
No applications are going to be made to deviate from that?
No.
Okay.
I can just clarify on that park as well. That's a part of the development agreement, so that is a requirement for Path to provide.
Right, thank you so much for that clarification. All right, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trina. I'll go to Kathleen next.
Hi, question in terms of the adjacent developments. I just learned that what's the name of this one? Eliza is a path development, correct?
It is.
Is Bella also a path
Correct.
development?
Correct.
I'm wondering if you can help me grasp with this notion of what representations were and weren't made by path. Can you help me out at all context wise?
Sorry, I think I just killed you there. You could just hit your button.
Trying to get some context in terms of, I'm hearing from some community members that they were misled by the realtor or various individuals. And I'm trying to understand how that would happen if it did.
Yeah. Our plan for other than what's been added in this application, our plan across the street has always been 6-story buildings. This DP was in long before Bella ever went to market. We only started selling Bella about around this time last year, maybe just before that. I have to double check. So the idea there was, my understand, I'm not in the sales then, but the sales, what has been told to them, this application has been shared with them. So anyone who was sold after we put this application in at Bella or at Eliza, should have been told there were six-story buildings going across the street
Right, okay. So that time period would have been around the 22, 23,
for this application,
July 23.
23. So at that
Okay.
stage, I believe at July 2023, I'm sure actually some of the homeowners know this better than me, where we definitely wouldn't have, we weren't close to starting to sell Bella at that time. And Eliza, we were probably selling the second building, some portion of the second building.
Okay. Were this variance to be denied, would that result in Path just building a sixth floor?
Yeah, like that,
Apartment?
that's a great question. And that's something we've thought. The challenge with this is that if the variance is denied, that corner parcel is going to be developed, right?
Exactly, yes.
If we can't develop it, and I don't like to say this, but we're gonna have to sell it to someone who can. The other challenge with it is because of how small it is, it's going to be challenging to develop that parcel and have a 6-meter setback from Royal Commons. So you're probably going to run into a position where the building gets pushed right to Royal Commons to the 1.5 meter setback, which sort of takes away all of the plaza walking bench space that we currently have designed that you'll see similarly on the other corner. If you know at the corner of Latoria and Ryder, it's just by there today. And that plaza looks great. Like we want to create those plaza spaces. If this parcel needs to be developed on its own, I don't know for sure, but I don't see how you keep that because the building's gonna have to get pushed right to the road. And so, you know, I think we're not going to go build a one, like the other option is to take this building and make it 4-story. Personally, from a urban design perspective, I would do that because you're gonna have a 4-story building and 2 6-story buildings. It's going to be, I don't, it's not great design.
Mhm.
So I think if this were to get denied, we'd either go back to the drawing board, try again, redone, or we would look to see what the other options are with this individual parcel. But again, there's then who, I don't know what comes. So
Okay. And what was the thinking on Path Development's part in terms of doing the kind of the staged multi-use building rather than 6?
rather than 6,
Stories.
all
Yeah.
resident, well,
Going
also
pure apartment or pure mixed use? I can understand.
because we need to do retail along Royal Commons.
Yeah,
You have to.
through the chair,
Okay.
the requirements are any building fronting on Royal Commons needs to have a commercial component, so they're forced into having a mixed use building. Which has the 4-story maximum.
So if we were to be strictly in accordance with the OCP, then it would probably be a smaller 6-story apartment and then a separate 4-story mixed. Just because
Essentially, yeah, it
you
would be,
can't stage, you can't stagger or tier. It sounds to me strict compliance means you'd have to have
It-
2 separate buildings.
it-
One
so,
commercial,
yeah,
one,
without doing it as proposed, it would be a 4-story building on the corner,
yes.
subdivided, and then a 6-story building next to it, with a gap in between. That's the alternative. So this is the approach that kind of achieves that. However, it's classified as a mixed use building because they're connected, but it still visually would be similar.
Got it. Thank you.
See, tree guy here again. We will go to you.
Okay. I have to get more clarification on this because that's why I wanted to know what this particular site that's left over, which, you know, how big it actually is to accommodate what has to go on the corner. So if we were in strict compliance with the OCP, the max that would be allowed on this, because it fronts on Royal Commons, is there would have to be a component of retail. It had to be multi-use. And as I understand it, the multi-use is only to be 4 stories. So this corner lot could have 4 stories with commercial on it. And if we did not make any change or recommend any change be made to 022, that particular building could only extend to the end of where the parking is currently for the sales office.
That's correct. And I haven't done the math on this, but in terms of minimum lot areas and things like that, that scenario might not actually be feasible, just in terms of fitting two smaller lots within there to accommodate that. So,
Exactly.
yes,
So
it
it
could
would
be very
probably need another use. Something else would have to be done with that property if that's not feasible. Yes,
Yeah, thank you. So this lot has been subdivided. So the lot size is 3,100 meters squared. The minimum lot size in the zone is 1,800 meters squared. So you actually cannot further subdivide this lot. So the only building that could fit on this lot is a 4-story mixed use building to meet the zoning regulations.
right, or less, something less than that,
Correct, but not 6 stories.
right, like a community garden. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm sorry. Just throwing it out there. Okay. I understand, I believe I understand where we sit now.
Great, thank you. I will go back to Kathleen. There you go.
This question is for the city, including the 2 councillors we have here, because you would have been present for the original development process. Am I correct or not? Yeah. So I'm trying to understand the representations that were made to council and to the city with the original application. What kind of comments were made in terms of what the future held for that presentation space? Can you help me with that? I'm really grappling with what people believed was going to happen in the future.
Thank you for the question. So this development permit was approved by staff. So it was not a council approved development permit. So as part of that review of that application, we would have reviewed it against the sub area plan and design guidelines within that. Just to be clear, the sub area plan has identified area 2 with heights of up to 4 stories along the northern edge, and then 6 stories for the remainder of the parcel of that area 2 of the entire parcel that we're speaking about. So just to clarify on that, but I would say that original development permit, they just showed that temporary presentation center and just indicated that it wasn't a part of this application. One could assume that when that is identified on a development site within Royal Bay, it would be assumed that it would ultimately be developed, though obviously a presentation center is a use that's temporary in nature. And yeah.
Thank you. And the next question is, if Path Developments wanted to go with 6 and 4 because they didn't get an approval, what's the next step? Then it goes to development. Would they do something else? How would it all work process-wise?
So as part of the amendments to our delegated authority framework, this property is within a master plan community, so it would be subject to staff approval unless there's a change in ownership of the property and the proposal does not align with the original intent. It would be staff approval, but if the proposal does not align with the design guidelines within the Latoria South sub area plan, then it would be subject to council approval. But I would say it's very likely that it would be staff approval.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll see Councillor Grow, although, sorry, I need a technical support here. It doesn't show up in my system despite his light flashing. Apologies, just one moment while we get Councillor Grove's microphone to go here. We like to create some suspense in these proceedings.
Thank you, Chair. I think the mic is working now. So just to I'm not sure why I'm struggling a little bit with trying to understand all the little twists and turns here. So apartment D on this drawing, you said has been shrunk in size to accommodate this proposed apartment E. Is that right? Yeah. So somehow, is there not a way to accommodate the needs? Oh, I see. So apartment E is actually considerable. So, oh, sorry. And you said 66 units, additional units with this drawing as opposed to the original plan? 60? And of those, how many are on the fifth and sixth floor, the contentious 2 floors? Would be like, sorry? 25? So you're looking at 25 additional units on 4, 5, and 6?
It's
Yeah.
24.
24? Okay. I'm not sure. I've been listening to the questioning. I think I appreciate it. I think a lot of the issues have been covered in my mind, what was up against, but I come back to the fact that for me, the sticking point, it's not technical. It's simply that these people that living in the Eliza building have represented that they have purchased an apartment, a home that is now affected different than what they thought was going to be built. So I don't know how we can get to the bottom of that, or if that even matters. Is there any way through? I mean, I mentioned the community garden is is an interesting one because I like that notion, but the idea too of the multi-use building taking on more importance in a potential design, perhaps different than what you have here. I don't know. You can, please feel free to.
Yeah. Just on the first question about the 4 stories, I mean, whether it's 4 or 6, the views don't change because the building across the street is 4 stories. Right. Plaza's 4 stories. So it doesn't, if this building goes ahead of 4 stories, which it sounds like would be supportable, it's the same outlook.
Sorry, I just have to respectfully ask, we can't take comments from the gallery. I appreciate the sentiment. It's just procedural rules. Thank you.
And then to your second point, certainly like with this retail, we're trying to figure out what the right amenity, what else can we offer in the community? Like there are certain tenants we want from the beginning. There are certain tenants we have tried to stay away from. And it's that balance of finding what's good for the community, what economically makes sense.
Yeah, I would just interject too. The notion of the second floor. I've been battling this now for this entire term because the development community, quite rightly, I understand the economics of it, that the 4-story is the new 3-story and the 6-story is the new 4-story as the kind of entry level structure that gets built for economic reasons, we're told. So I need to simply go with that because it's common, it's in the media, it's always heard as and the development community speaks to that regularly. It's interesting that there's so many 4-story buildings built in Royal Bay, and I was always wondering, wonder what wrong. I understand land pricing, planning takes years, so it's now evolving such. So given that understanding of the argument that the 4-story view, the one you just made, the 4-story view from the 4th floor perhaps is unaffected. I have a hard time with that. There's elevation changes can adjust it, and there's sky. There's perhaps distant views that are, affected to some degree, and there would be more massing of a building across the road than what would be. It would change the context of the street as well. So I think that some of that element was in there.
Yeah, I would just, fair enough. I think the context though, just in terms of what's beside it with 2 6-story buildings, I think we should be mindful of in terms of the design from the streetscape design of having the 4-story with 2 6-stories next to it. But our again goes back to what's contemplated in area 2 of the land use bylaw is the residential of 6 stories, and that's,
Yeah.
you know,
So
where we got that from.
the two Eliza buildings are built and occupied. And then the third building in Ryder Hesjedal, as you head south, is that completed? No, that's
No, that's under construction.
right. And those buildings would not be affected by this ruling as much or at all because they're further south and they're looking at already established 6-story buildings. But this particular point is sort of contentious because of the timing of the occupation of the tenants and when they bought the building and how the plans evolved. So that's, I find it very difficult to understand how this 5 and 6 stories can be added in the timing, given the consumer notion of what they purchased and what they expected to be built. And I can see the problem, and I'm sympathetic with the residents who've pointed this out. And I don't quite know where to go with that, other than that there may be, and it's beyond my capacity to have a very creative alternate design for that corner. Yeah, I know you guys scratch your head and plan this and work on this all the time. It's your business, but I don't even know what to say. So at this point, I'm still finding this discussion interesting, and I'm a little concerned that I'm still trying to find it hard to simply go with what technically sounds like a very straightforward approval, technically, but then there's a human element here that stops me in my tracks. Sorry, I can't be of more use, but anyway, for now, I'll just let it go.
Thank you, Councillor Grove. Maybe I'll take a moment. I think the challenge here is that the truth, if you will, kind of lies somewhere in the middle, as it usually does. You know, obviously, when individuals were purchasing Eliza, you know, they were entering the presentation center. I've walked by it daily. I live in Royal Bay, so I'm very familiar with the area. And you know, when something doesn't exist, you can only go off what you see, and that's websites and print materials and things like that. So I can certainly understand how, and on the one extreme, we'd say people thought, okay, there would be nothing more than a single story building there because that's what was there when they were exploring it. Certainly, there were no materials to the contrary in the early stages. We know that. Having been through the process in Royal Bay, real estate agents don't always disclose everything or are not aware of everything. So it's a little challenging. And I think even when we reached a point when it was known there would be, you know, more, I guess, visible development, there was some at least artistic renderings of what might happen. We reached a point where we had the 4 6-story buildings, and yet, you know, the presentation center diagram kind of remained. And no offense, you know, Matthew, to you or anyone at Path, but I think that, you know, it presents a misleading picture. And for me, I'm going to draw the comparison. I got to go way back in time here, and I don't like this one, to 360 Latoria, which now is 3554 Ryder Hesjedal, which was a similar scenario where in the OCP it was zoned as a neighborhood house. It was supposed to be essentially a low story area with mixed use commercial. Ultimately that lot was sold, and now it's, you know, it's a condominium building and potentially another proposed to be built there, which fundamentally changed the character of the sort of commons area, sort of kitty corner to what's there. So the human element, as Councillor Grove referred to it, is certainly impacting me, because at that time, I know many residents, myself included, had seen the plans for neighborhood house, which even after the land had been sold and plans had changed, was not updated in marketing materials or anything. So we went there and thought, oh, this is what's going to be here, and lo and behold, it wasn't. So I gotta say, I have a very sympathetic ear for the folks that feel that they've had the rug pulled out from under them, that they've moved in and have gone, this is not what we were sold. That being said, you know, I heard a comment at the outset, and again, I try to find balance. One of the speakers who came forward indicated that, you know, these are residents, and, you know, the developers are not residents. And I would argue that, you know, Path has been a very good partner of Colwood, continues to be largely, you know, 90% of the time. We work very well together, and they've been very supportive of the city in terms of supporting events and working with the planning department. So this isn't a us versus them conversation. And I think I wanted to level set that a little bit, is that, you know, Path is a for-profit business. They have, and I don't think, Matthew, you're going to disagree with me there. You know, developers are stakeholders in our community, like residents, like anyone else, and they seek to, you know, to make projects that are viable for them, you know, and for their investors and so on. But I find the biggest challenge right now is to me, we're essentially forced into the position of moderating a dispute between a seller and a customer. If you want my personal opinion, that's how I view it. Is you have people in Eliza that really felt they were sold one vision, and you now have this other vision across the road. And I guess that's why I'd been more hopeful that we would have found a you know, some sort of path forward, that maybe was a little more viable for the folks that are there. That being said, so going back to my earlier, and I'm fairly long-winded for anyone who hasn't been here before, so I apologize in advance. Going back to what I said earlier, there is genuine fear about what's proposed right now from the residents that are there and what that would look like. But I would also caution you to be cognizant of what could happen. And I think we heard that here as well, is that if we don't work with the primary developer in the community to find a solution, we could find ourselves in a situation where you sort of revert back to the permitting that's in place. You see 4 or 6-story residential buildings, and then you're left with this isolated corner. And again, Path being a business that has investors and shareholders, they may look at that and say it's not feasible for us to build something here. And then we have to look at, okay, what will we end up with? And that is my concern, because as I said, the example exists just over at 360 Latoria, where it didn't make business sense for the precursor to Path to proceed there. So they sold that property, and what ended up being built certainly didn't align with the vision of Royal Bay. So I wanted to put that sort of cautionary message out to everybody that we're better to work with Path on this than to box them into a position where they go, okay, this isn't viable. So that brings me back to I guess where we're at now. And for Path, I mean, you've indicated, Matthew, that, you know, just building 4 stories doesn't align with 6 stories, and I somewhat understand that, despite being an architectural neophyte and not being a planning expert. But I wonder, was there any consideration given to stepping it back a little further? I mean, this is very rudimentary, but by my count, looking at the top floor or top 2 floors, I see, you know, maybe a dozen units or so. And my count, you know, varies probably by 4 either way, but depending on the size of them, if you were to step back the 4 stories a little further into that building, knowing that we have to do work on the adjacent zoning with the buildings there, is there an opportunity to make up for that in terms of building length or width or unit composition? And I'm way out in left field on this one here, but I guess what I'm looking for is a compromise. How do we find a way where we say, okay, there's always going to be 4 stories on that corner. That is what has always been in the plan, despite fairly misleading artistic renderings. I'll give you that. There's always going to be 6-story residential buildings in that adjacent parcel. So can we find a way to keep the setbacks and things, which you've graciously proposed, which I think add to the streetscape, and move a few of those top floor units somewhere else? And I know that's a big ask. Throw it out on the table, and I don't necessarily know if there's even an answer today, but if there's a possibility to go back to the drawing board and you know, play around with the pencil a little bit, I guess that's what I'm looking to understand.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for all the comments and feedback. I think that there's always a way to look at what else can be done. It all comes down to, it does come down a lot of the time to the economics and making sure it makes sense. And if it does, it's something we'll look at. So don't have a great answer for you today, but if you give us some time, probably to work with our architects and consultant team, we can see what can be accomplished there.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's a fair and honest answer. I recognize that there's a lot that goes into that question. You know, I just think right now we're at a place where some communication, I think, would be helpful as well, because again, you know, we have a petition from, you know, 75 residents that largely live Ryder Hesjedal, and there are some viewpoints that understand that something would always be built. There's a lot of people that don't understand that anything would be built on that corner. So there's some awareness work to be done, I think, frankly, on behalf of PATH, but on behalf of the city as well, to, we have a duty to residents to make them understand what this zoning means and what's happening there. And, I would call some real estate agents to account if I could, and say, okay, you didn't do a good job by your clients. I hope some of them are listening. But we should look to find a compromise. I think there's a motion in here somewhere. I'm going to give it a few minutes, but in the interim, I'll just concede the floor here and give it over to Kaitlyn. Thanks.
Just kind of want to echo what Ian is saying, and it really resonates with me. And just want to talk more about this issue of misrepresentation on the part of realtors. It irks me. But the problem is do we just let it happen? What is the solution? And I don't know either. I don't know what the solution is. But we have a community and we have a community plan. And so it envisages density at a certain level. So does the, adequate density that the city requires, the community. I don't know what that is, but I find it incredibly irksome that all of us are put in this position because representations are not particularly accurate. So certainly that message can be taken back to PATH, but I don't necessarily know if it is PATH. But I think, we've got these competing interests. I don't see, either one in balance winning out. I'm always in favor of, this is the bylaw, this is, we have planning that happens and great effort takes place in that regard, and to have it thrown out the window or modified because realtors aren't being upfront. And I don't know that they are. I have to be clear. I'm hearing from the residents that they were sold a bill of goods, and I'm not clear whether that's the case or not. And if you look at it strictly in terms of what should the city do about the fact that realtors aren't being upfront, the sad answer for residents is that your remedy is not the city. It doesn't mean we should change our bylaws. It doesn't mean we should change density. If you're strictly to go according to Hale, you've got a lawsuit. If there's really was a misrepresentation, then you'd go after the realtor or whoever it was, and that it would be your traditional remedy. So I think what Ian suggests, although we can't quite come up with something, is that compromise. And it sounds that he also has a little bit of irksome sentiments as well. I mean, it's not right. If people are, this is their dream and they're really excited about buying a home, and they're getting told, oh no, there's going to be this like a great big alleyway and a park and all, et cetera, et cetera. I think a compromise needs to be found. And I am, as Mr. Ward is, very concerned that if we drop the ball and we just reject it outright, then we're going to get something nobody wants. It's not, I'm afraid it's not going to be a garden, right? We have a park already. It is the developer's land and they purchased it. There are equities in the developer's favor as well. They purchased a piece of land, recognizing this is how the bylaws work. This is what I can do as of right. So we've got, on the one hand, the consumer potentially not being treated properly. And on the other hand, a developer who has paid a price, which presumably builds in the density that they had expected to be able to obtain. So I'm really hopeful that there is some opportunity for compromise, because these competing interests just don't mesh. That's the problem. And I must say that I do kind of like the stepped up design. I think it is better to have a larger building that kind of steps up and rises from 4 to 6, and maybe a more gradual rise is the solution, and just push it over a little bit. I don't know, but I think, we've got a murky situation, a situation that does not please me and probably nobody else in this room. And so, yeah, I think we should maybe go back to the drawing board and work on something that potentially works.
Thank you, Kathleen. I mean, I think the sentiment's pretty clear. I would again just stress that this isn't adversarial. I think, as I said at the outset, we have a duty. I certainly do as an elected official to represent the community and all stakeholders. And, you know, and I've heard loud and clear from residents that this is a major concern. Um, I would state, and sorry, I digress, but outside of the sort of master planned area, outside of this particular subject, the city is making changes to how we approach development permits so that in future council, instead of having something come forward with artistic renderings and then 4 years later something comes up that doesn't resemble it whatsoever, we are retaining control over that outside the master plan community environment. So there have been steps taken to kind of, I guess, govern against, you know, sort of bait and switch type things. And that certainly I don't think is the term I would use here. I would say that, again, PATH has been a very strong partner with the city for many years. I suspect that, you know, Matthew understands what we're talking about here and knows that even if it were to go past the committee to council, the sentiment it runs pretty deep, and I think it would be very challenged. So my concern, as I said, also is that we don't want to simply slam and say, no, it doesn't make sense, because that could happen to the area. And out of that same concern for the residents is that we get back to a place where now you sell off that parcel and something else gets built that frankly would not benefit anyone that lives in Eliza or, you know, further afield in Royal Bay. So I think the best solution here is to try to approach this in a mature and professional way as partners and leverage the strong relationship that we have between our staff and PATH. I know it's not optimal for PATH today to hear this, but I think the best bet is to go back and take these concerns and say, okay, is there something we can do? And Matthew, I appreciate you acknowledging that there's at least a willingness to look at it. I understand it could be a quick 1 hour conversation and that's it, or it could be something that's more productive, but at least let's give it a go in the spirit of goodwill and go that way. So with that, I would just move that we refer to staff. The unstated component of that is that they would then facilitate meetings with PATH to see, okay, what can we do here? And just to Mairi or Matthew, is the direction clear from the committee at this point on what that referral would mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add that this application will go to council on August 24th. So we certainly have additional time to coordinate with the developer on alternatives that we can bring to council. I would just add, just before you vote on that motion, just in terms of the evolution of this application, when PATH originally came in, it was for a 6-story building with no step back. So I would say the step back on the top 2 floors was sort of a negotiated compromise amongst us, but we will certainly work together on alternatives before we go back to council on August 24th.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And that history is valuable. And if there is no further room to move, there's no further room to move, but we'd be remiss if we didn't try. You know, we owe it to residents and I think to PATH as well, so that there's clarity moving forward when it gets to the council table. So with that, again, the motion is to refer back to staff. I will call the question. All those opposed? Seeing none, that's unanimous. That takes care of that item. Thank you. Appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you, staff. We will move on to item 5.2, which is a development variance permit for 3615 Ryder Hesjedal Way. I believe Kaitlyn is going to speak to us about a variance on the Colwood sign bylaw.
Good evening, committee. As mentioned, today I'll be introducing the development variance permit application, or DVP 00022 for 3615 Ryder Hesjedal Way. There we go. So the applicant is requesting a variance to section 11C2 of the Colwood sign bylaw 1988 to increase the permitted fascia sign height from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters. This is in order to permit the 3 proposed fascia signs for Rexall at 3615 Ryder Hesjedal Way. These three signs are shown on the elevations on the slide, marked as S1, S2, and S3 in the little red circles there. So for some site context, the subject property is located at the corner of Producers Way, Ryder, Hesjedal Way, and Machosen Road, with the subject building fronting Machosen Road. The locations of the three proposed fascia signs are highlighted in blue on the image provided there. So the subject property is in Area 6 of the CD28 zone, as well as the Seaside Village OCP land use designation. So this area features a variety of uses, with the subject property containing commercial uses, as well as a proposed daycare. The surrounding lots include institutional uses like the proposed long-term care home to the north and the Royal BC Collections Facility and construction to the south, as well as a variety of multifamily residential developments and park space. So the Seaside Village land use designation is shown in red on the map there on the left, and the subject property is also located in the Commons Forming Character Development Permit area, shown in yellow in the map on the right. So the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan contains design guidelines for the Commons area. So generally, these guidelines support signage that aligns with the regulations of the Colwood Sign Bylaw, that is complementary to the character of the buildings in the neighborhood, and that provides clear signage for the commercial buildings, the commercial businesses that they represent. So development permit was previously approved for the commercial development as a whole, and a separate permit would not be required for the proposed signage. So previously, the city did approve a variance request to permit overheight fascia signs for another rec cell located at 1880 Island Highway. The variance approved to permit these signs increased the permitted height to 1.8 meters for one sign and 1.9 meters for three other fascia signs. So this is larger than the signs that are part of the current proposal. So the Colwood Sign Bylaw sets a maximum fascia sign height of 1.2 meters, and the proposed fascia signs are 1.5 meters, exceeding this permitted height by 0.3 meters. The sign bylaw also sets regulations for things like sign area and location, all of which are met by the proposed fascia signs. So in the image here, you can see kind of a rendering of the dimensions of the proposed signage. So the image at the top of the slide here shows the proposed signage on the right side here, as well as the elevations that were included with the approved development permit on the left, which includes signage with a sign height of 1.2 meters. So while the proposed fascia signs will be taller than others in the development area, this is not expected to have a large visual impact and will still align with the overall character of the development. So overall, staff are supportive of the variance request. The proposed signs align with all of the regulations bylaw other than the fascia sign height. The signs align with those to be complementary to the buildings in the area. As well, they provide clear signage for the business that they represent. The applicant has already also taken steps to reduce the proposed signage to better comply with our bylaws. And have noted in their letter of rationale that further reductions could start to impact the clarity and visibility of the sign. As well, the increase to sign height is seen as relatively minor and expected to have limited visual impact. Finally, the City of Colwood has also previously approved a variance to fascia sign height for a rec cell at 1880 Island Highway. So in terms of communication, development notification signs have been posted on the subject property on all three of the street frontages. Additionally, notification postcards will be sent to neighboring properties within 100 meters of the subject property prior to council's decision of the variance request. So some options and alternatives for committee today. Committee may consider recommending to council one of the following options. Option one is the staff recommendation that the variance is approved, which would have the effect of increasing the permitted fascia sign height from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters. Alternatively, committee could recommend that the DVP be deferred for more information, that the DVP be denied, or another option as determined by committee for council consideration. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the application. Additionally, the applicant, Ryan Matthews, is also here virtually tonight and is able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Are there any questions from the committee at all? Don't see any. I'm just, for the record, I think it's pretty consistent with precedent. As you indicated, these are smaller even than what we've seen at 1880 Island Highway. It's the anchor tenant on, on an arterial on Machosen and then in the corner of Ryder Hesjedal opposite the museum. So I can't really see any barrier here. I suspect I'm not alone. So I'll seek a motion from the committee. Are you moving option one, I assume? Yeah, okay. So option one, the staff recommendation, just to get some exercise, all those in favor? And we lifted our arm. Okay. Thank you very much. We actually do have one more item. I thought that was it, but there is item 5.3, planning annual update from Mairi, our manager of planning. Sorry, Mairi, I just caught that at the end there. I almost adjourned.
Great. Well, good evening, committee. So yes, tonight I will be providing our biannual update. So just to reiterate, the purpose of the update is really just to provide you a status update on applications that you have reviewed in the last 6 months. We've been doing this biannual update. I think this is our 3rd time now. So this one will cover the time frame from January of this year to now. So we kickstarted the year off with the amendments to the CD30 zone, which is our beachland zone. There were a few amendments that were proposed. It was to add hotels and motels as part of area 1 and 8, and then to reduce the rear yard setback in areas 3 and 7 from 6 meters to 5 meters. For the purpose of the presentation, I've just put them on 2 separate slides because they follow different processes, but this was introduced at committee in January. Committee decided to vote on each of those amendments separately. So starting with the hotels and motels, the committee forwarded the staff recommendation to support that amendment. And then the committee also recommended to council to hold a public hearing because this is a non-residential development. Council has the option to hold a public hearing or not through the Local Government Act. This then proceeded to council. Council passed that staff recommendation, and then the bylaw was given 1st and 2nd reading. And then in March, we held a public hearing. After the public hearing, council did amend the bylaw to remove the use of motel, so to only permit a hotel. And then, as you can recall, in area 8, there's area 8A, which is closest to the Village Plaza, and then area 8B. So council amended to only permit a hotel in area 8B, which is the area that permits higher heights. That's just outside of the Village Plaza area. And that was ultimately given 3rd reading and adoption on that night. Next is the setback amendment. So that was reducing the rear yard setback in areas 3 and 7. So those are the single family areas within the beachland zone. The committee recommended to oppose the reduction of the rear yard setback. So that recommendation was forwarded to council. Council passed a motion to approve the reduction of the rear yard setback. That then went back to council in February, and then council referred it back to staff for clarification on what the implications are of reducing that rear yard setback. That went back to council for consideration, and then council amended the bylaw to remove area 7. So and to only reduce the rear yard setback in area 3. So area 3 is the area that they are currently constructing single family homes. So that reduction in the rear yard setback is only applied to area 3 right now. The bylaw was ultimately adopted at the end of March. The February Planning and Land Use Committee was canceled. So then we went on to March. And we started with the implementation of small scale multi-unit housing. So this is certainly something that we have talked a lot about. Municipalities are, of course, required to comply with provincial legislation of Bills 25 and Bill 44 to permit small scale multi-unit housing. So as part of that compliance, we had to amend our land use bylaw and off-street parking bylaw to comply. So this was introduced to the committee in March. The committee did forward that staff recommendation to council. Council referred that back to staff to look at other municipalities within the CRD and other municipalities within the Lower Mainland, such as Richmond and Burnaby. Staff then brought that back to council, and council passed the motion to approve our proposed approach to small scale multi-unit housing. And as part of that, council approved to remove that form and character requirement for developments of 4 units or less. Staff then returned to council for consideration of the bylaw, which was then referred back to staff. So we are currently bringing this bylaw to council on July 13th with our proposed amendments for first, second, and third reading. The amendments to the off-street parking bylaw have since been adopted, so we comply with those requirements. I would also add that staff submitted a letter to the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs with our updated timeline for implementation of small scale multi-unit housing. The deadline was June 30th. So we have communicated to them that we are fully intending on complying and are actively doing that, but we will comply by August 24th, which is our new sort of adopted date for that amending bylaw. Next was the amendments to our delegated authority framework. So this came as part of a notice of motion to council, which was then referred to planning and land use. The committee forwarded that recommendation back to council with that amendment. As you can recall, that development permits within master plan communities are sort of exempted from requiring council approval. And there was an amendment to recognize a change in ownership in master plan communities. So that was sent back to council, and then council approved that recommendation. Staff returned to council with a more comprehensive staff report with really identifying council's key decision points related to changing delegated authority framework. Council did ultimately pass the staff recommendation there with some amendments, such as defining new terms within that bylaw to provide in-stream protection, and there's a few others. Staff will be returning to council on August 24th for second and third reading of those amendments, but we have already started communicating to developments and the applicants that if you are submitting a development permit application that is not within a master plan community, it would require council approval. Next was the DBP for the long-term care facility. So this was a development variance permit to increase the height, the roof coverage, and retaining walls. This was approved by committee and approved by council. This was the DBP for 3501 Olympian Way. So that's that 6-story building at VMP and Latoria Road. And that was to reduce the flanking street setback from 7.5 meters to 5.5 meters. The committee forwarded the recommendation to approve the DBP and council did the same. We then had the rezoning application for 3415 Fulton Road. So this was a rezoning from R1 to a new it was not to a CD zone. It was to our hillside attached housing. So that's sort of our template zone for attached housing in hillside areas. The committee forwarded the staff recommendation to council to approve that rezoning. Council gave the amending bylaw for second and third reading. The applicant then registered the development agreement and it ultimately got adoption on June 22nd. Next was the DVP for 392 Royal Bay Drive. So this was a variance to the subdivision and development servicing bylaw to decrease the cul-de-sac radius, remove the parking island, and increase the combined driveway width. The staff recommendation for this application was to deny the application. The committee ultimately recommended to council to approve the variance and to include Grass Creek pavers or similar permeable service for the increased driveway width for the visitor parking stalls. That went to council and council did ultimately approve that DVP, so that's been issued. And then finally, in the May Planning and Land Use Committee meeting, we had the rezoning application for 420 Tamarack Road. So that was a rezoning from R1 to a new CD zone to accommodate a 6-story building. That was scheduled to go to council and it was delayed. So council can consider the resolution about considering the appropriateness of the Culver Corners designation within the Tamarack neighborhood. Council considered that recommendation alongside other policy projects and ultimately decided to sort of postpone the review of the Culver Corners designation to a future OCP update. So staff have communicated that the intent is to start an OCP update in January of 2027. So the review of that Culver Corners designation would form part of that project. And this application still needs to go to council. And then the June Planning and Land Use Committee meeting was canceled. So just a summary, we've reviewed 8 applications so far. 5 have been adopted or approved, and then 3 are still in progress. Our next update will be at the end of the year. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mari. Appreciate that. Any questions, Kathleen here? Nope.
Just first, a terminology question. When you say a master planned community, is that a comprehensive development zone? Or what do we mean by master plan community?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So this is a part of the amendments to the delegated authority framework. So master plan communities are those who have sub-area plans or local area plans within our OCP that have their own specific design guidelines. So council has approved Latoria South, Beachlands, and Ocean Grove, who all have their own specific design guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else? No. Thanks, Mari. I appreciate the update. You summed up a lot of work in a very short period of time. Well done. Appreciate that. Thank you to staff for helping out this evening, for the technical support. Thank you to our committee members and for Councillor Grove to filling in, and thank you to the folks out there who took the time to, on a sunny evening, to come join us and those online. With that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.